Do you want to become a real pirate? Sea of Thieves is where it's at. You can go dig up treasure, fight skeletons and spirits, collect bounties, fight different ships, steal other pirates' treasure, and many more things that can make you a menace to pirate society. Customize your character, weapons, and ship with all of the treasure you stole, earned honestly through your hard labor. I usually stay away from open world games because there's just too little direction in the game for me to find it enjoyable to play, but with Sea of Thieves I don't have that issue. Why? Because you and your friends can just put up different quests and go from there. Usually you'll find a message in a bottle during your quest that can point you to your next quest and so on. This makes it so you don't have to aimlessly walk around kicking rocks or sailing into the unknown if you don't vibe with that kind of thing. One thing I do want to note is that the only form of quote-unquote progression is the different cosmetics you can buy with the money you earn in the game from your quests, but nothing else. There's also a battle pass that gives you some resources when you level up. I like to play this game with friends. It's not something I'll likely gravitate towards to play solo, but with 1 to 3 other people this is a very good way to spend your day or evening. I would highly recommend you pick this up, especially when it's on sale. Journey is a very pretty walking simulator type game. It's visually very beautiful, although you do get flashbanged pretty badly by the loading screens between chapters. There's no talking in the game and very few directional tips, but throughout the entire journey the path was very clear. The same goes for the storytelling. Even though it's only visuals, it portrays the journey ahead of you pretty well and serves as a nice introduction to the next level. I came across one other traveler during my first journey, and playing together is definitely more fun than traveling by yourself. It makes the path less lonely. There's a few things you can miss throughout your playthrough, but thankfully there's a chapter select that can help you out. I recommend you play this on a controller instead of a keyboard, even though it's possible to play on keyboard. This game was originally a PlayStation release and is therefore made for controller gameplay. I'd say Journey is definitely worth playing, even though it's a bit of an older game. It has not lost its charm at all. One tip for all people trying to play together with a friend: I've noticed it's easiest to get into the same level as your friend if you wait for your friend to load into the chapter first, and then immediately join once they are in the chapter. Since your friend will be in a very new lobby, there is a high chance you will be put in the same lobby before anyone else is. Haiku the Robot seemed like a Hollow Knight clone at first. A Metroidvania about an illness, in this case a virus, spreading through the underground world. I was pleasantly surprised, however. The game is very fun and not, I want to throw my controller at my monitor, difficult. It's definitely great for people who love Hollow Knight that are looking for a more relaxed experience. The power-ups are similar to those in Hollow Knight and they make movement very smooth and fluid. There's one more intense boss, but nothing half an hour of practice can't beat. I almost never got lost during my playthrough because it was always quite clear which area to explore next. I like that there's disruptors you have to destroy before the map becomes visible, instead of having to buy the map from an NPC. The colors and music in Haiku are very pretty. I like the diversity of every area. The NPCs are very cute and fun to interact with, and after I beat the game, they made me want to get all the other achievements to finish all of their storylines. Basically, this game never feels dull to play. It's just a pretty, silly, robotic world that needs saving. This game is a great 10-ish hour experience for anyone who likes Metroidvania or platformer games. There's not too much to say about this software. It seemed like an April Fool's joke last year, but it's a real thing. For 99 cents, it's definitely worth buying, even just for sillies. It's basically more Placid Duck Simulator, but as a desktop application. This is great if you need a little bit of motivation while you're studying or working and need a little ducky, or 50, to brighten up your day. You can choose to turn audio on or off as well as some other quality of life features. If you want more ducks, there's a few guides out there that will guide you through the steps. And if you leave the game open for long enough, you'll see some interesting familiar fellows. For $1, this is definitely worth it if you like Placid Duck Simulator. Moon Hunters seems to get a lot of shade for being a roguelike game and having the story be as it is. I actually quite like the idea. It makes sense to have different runs while keeping the things you've unlocked previously, since you are reshaping your story with each run. That's the fun part of folklore and old stories. Details change with each telling. That's the game's whole gimmick, and I think having this game be a roguelike fits seamlessly with that idea. The gameplay itself is nothing too groundbreaking. It's a top-down dungeon crawler where you earn money by slaying enemies and destroying environment set pieces while you move through the dungeons to find secrets and boss arenas. You cannot interact with certain things in the game unless you have a specific characteristic, which I think makes for an interesting twist. You can earn these characteristics by choosing different dialogue options when you're talking to NPCs or during nightfall interactions. At nightfall, when you're in your camp, you can choose to upgrade your stats by cooking, stargazing, hunting, or keeping watch. You can also choose to rest. This makes the game very appealing to me since it's not something I have encountered much before. Once morning hits, you choose a different dungeon to go to, and then the cycle repeats. You repeat the dungeon fighting and nighttime camp interactions until your 5 days are over, and then it's boss time. The boss is definitely easier the more players you have. If you play solo, this fight will definitely pose a bit of a challenge, but if you're with 3 or 4 players, you'll defeat him pretty easily. It's not the best boss fight ever made, but not the worst either. Just not skilled optimally. Once your story is completed, you'll be brought back to your gallery or constellation hall, where you will see a pop-up of what your character became after the story took place and any constellations you unlocked during your run. Overall, the game is very, very pretty. I love the art style and the music. It's definitely the game's strong point. I personally really love the game, but I can see why it's not everyone's cup of tea. I'll definitely play a lot more of this game because of the way the story works, but gameplay-wise, the fighting aspect might get a little tedious after a while. I definitely recommend playing this together with some friends for an even better time. This just wasn't it for me. I got kind of excited when I spotted this during the Steam Next Fest because I've played a bunch of Among Us with my online friends. But my enthusiasm quickly faded when I realized this is basically just the VR game but overhauled so you can play it without a VR headset. The privacy agreement even mentions, by agreeing to the terms for Among Us VR. The 3D element itself is actually quite alright. I don't love the way you interact with the doors, but other than that it's fine. Nothing above expectations. But the lobbies are horrible. I hate that there's no option to just type in chat. You either speak or use the preset text options, but you cannot text yourself. This gets quite difficult if you're in a situation where you cannot talk, but want to communicate properly with your fellow players instead of using the default chat options. If you don't have a VR headset, you should definitely skip this version of Among Us, and even if you do have a VR setup, I don't think you'll have the greatest time here. The community of Among Us VR is absolutely terrible. Regular old Among Us is still the best by far. I don't really know how to feel about this one. I decided to give this franchise another shot since it's been a while since I last played a game from 100 Cozy Games. But this is one of those games where I wish Steam would just have a neutral review option. I don't love the way the color mode works with the cats. It's just a bit, I don't know, it makes it easier to find the cats than if everything would be in black and white. Which is still an option in the game, thank God. In this particular game, the cats are very, very tiny. To the point where I would consider them to be too tiny. The art is decent in this game. Maybe the line thickness is still on the slightly thick side, but it's forgivable. The reason why I chose to not recommend this game, even though I'm neutral about it, is simply because there are much better games in this genre out there. In my opinion, 100 Cozy Games peaked at 100 Asian Cats and 100 Christmas Cats. Play those instead if you like this dev. If you want to branch out, look at the Hidden Capybaras games. For this game, I did not buy the DLC. Seems like I'll be staying away from this franchise a little longer.